Okay. Please say okay on the little pop-up that just popped up to tell you the meeting is being recorded. And welcome to our April circulation committee meeting. I did sort of try to schedule this one for before the users group, largely because of the vote on the reciprocity policy, which, as a reminder, is just a vote on whether or not we are forwarding it to the users group, not a final adoption vote. So if anyone was feeling any pressure, you can take the pressure off. But the first thing on the agenda that I have, because it is likely to be possibly the most time consuming, and also because Kendall might have to leave if we go too long on stuff, is Kendall's part, where he will be talking with us about the new item type standardization project, and then we'll let the discussion from that feed right into the reciprocity policy draft discussion and the vote. I will say that all of the supporting documents for this meeting are not on that page of the website. Let me give you the link real quick, though. All of these are linked on the circulation committee page under documents. So let me give you the link to the circ committee page. There is that. And then if you scroll down, the agenda is under agendas, but if you scroll all the way to the bottom where it says documents, there are links to all of the various supporting documents that will be connected to this discussion in today's meeting. So you may want to have that handy as we go along, but I may drop links to specific documents as well. So I will now turn it over to Kendall for his presentation about new item type standardization.
Thank you. So I'm not sure how many users group meetings we have discussed reciprocity. I do remember it started in March of 2008 when we officially turned on system-wide holds in the system, and it has been discussed many times since. Most notably the last 3 users group meetings and either CIRC or DB committee in July or August is when it started up last time. So rather than do what we've been doing for years, which was we'll tweak it around the edges and hope we can make it better, I decided, you know what, I'm really going to dig into this and see if there is a way that we can perhaps fix this. Because I knew that a lot of libraries had made rather dramatic changes to their system based on a combination of COVID, libraries being closed, you know, curbside delivery, and going fine free. So as we really started digging into this, we found, you know, 3 different things. I talked about this at the last users group. Reciprocity policy needed to be rewritten and kind of clarified a bit. And again, policy documents are statements of intent. This is what the membership of RSA would, this is our policy, this is what we want to happen. Whether or not the system can make the policy happen is a completely different, separate story. The policy is the statement of intent, and that's what you all will be voting on later. And then as we started talking about the policy also revealed that the 2 issues that were causing problems were the fact that nobody uses item types for new materials the same way, and there are lots of items marked as new materials dating all the way back to the time of our migration in 2007. So we separated those out into 3 different things. We're basically here to talk about the second part of this, the new materials item types part of this. The cleanup of new materials will happen no matter what. But I think after digging into the data, we have pretty much figured out that all of the things that caused our system to be set up the way that it is in as far as new materials and holds go, in all cases except for 2 libraries, that's all ancient history now, and can be fixed rather simply. It'll take a long time to do it, but it can be fixed rather simply. So one of the first things I did was back in February and March, we did do a survey among member libraries. And I asked libraries, we had very good response, by the way. This is one of the best survey responses we've ever gotten. For new materials in general, all libraries, 50% plus or minus 5, and that plus or minus 5% on the half was basically is the difference between a book or a DVD or an item type specific thing. But roughly 50% of all members allow system-wide holds on new items. 36% of members, plus or minus 3%, allow local holds only on new items, and 14% plus or minus 8%, and again, a bigger swing there. Basically, that big swing is based on item type again, allow no holds on new items. So you can't hold them at all. Many years ago, libraries were purchasing multiple copies of a title and checking them out and holding them differently. Only 3% of libraries report doing that nowadays. And that is one of the biggest things that is going to be able to make this work well for us. Because if you buy, let's say, 4 copies of a title, and one is for rent, one is for local holds, one is for system-wide holds, and one is for your browse shelf, you have to have 4 different item types to make that work. But it seems like that's not really happening much anymore. As far as how long something should be new, we've had a lot of discussions about this. What is our kind of absolute cutoff time for how long something should be new? School libraries pretty much 100% agreed that materials cataloged as new should be pulled off of new item types at the end of the school year. So like a June, July cleanup of those. Public libraries also agree that items shouldn't be new for longer than a year. Now, more than half of the libraries thought that 6 months was a reasonable time for something to be cataloged as new, but everyone agreed that anything over a year should not be cataloged as new anymore, which is nice because that means that we have 2 data points for all our schools. That means we do a cleanup in the summer. For public libraries, 12 months max. Now, if your library wants to do something shorter, great, that's fine. But 1 year max is basically, everybody said that's as long as it should be, which means anything older than the 1st of April right now, 2021, that should not be sitting on a new material item type. I did ask how many people would be willing to do a big change and move to new item types to fix this. 80% said yes, 11% said no, and the ones that said no or I'm not quite sure, the standard answer was I need more information to make an informed decision. And these questions were asked before we had any kind of concrete plan to do anything. And then I asked the kind of pie in the sky question is, there's a long-term project that we could think about doing to rework all RSA item types and reduce the number and make them more standardized in their usage. 62% said yes, they would be for that. 29% said they support the full review, but need a lot more details to adopt, and 5% said no. So that was good to hear. There's support to do this. We have 2 very good endpoints for how long something should be new, and pretty good data on roughly 50% of all new items are good for system-wide holds, and the other 50% are essentially not system-wide holds, they're local holds or no holds. So that's all good information to know. So a little bit of background, there are 20 item types for new materials. That's way too many. 6 of those are for books, 4 are for Blu-rays, 2 are for DVDs, and then there are 8 other kind of miscellaneous ones. And again, we have that many because we used to need them. We don't need them anymore. Nobody is using them. So this page is the one that is basically the action page. This is what we are recommending that we move to. So over on the left, oh, hold on, my mouse is moving slowly. There we go. Over on the left, we have the new item type code. We started them all with N so that they will all be together in the menu. As you know, right now, some of them are book new, some of them are new books, some of them are DVD new, some of them are new DVD. We wanted them all to appear in the list in the same spot. So we went with all new codes. So the existing codes of book new L, and new book account for 87.34% of all new items being cataloged in the system. And of this 87%, again, half of those are good for system-wide holds and half of those are only used for local holds or no holds at all. So we are proposing 2 different item types to cover that. New book H would be for the libraries that allow system-wide holds on their new books, and new book for the libraries that do no holds or local holds only. Now, you might be wondering, why would we do that? For reciprocity to work, the system needs to know at a broader scale whether or not something should be allowed to be held or not. The system cannot and will never, until we say every new book must be cataloged as book or book new, every regular book must be cataloged as book or book special. Until we basically say you only have one option, the system will never be 100% perfect. But by designating that some books can be held system-wide, we can take those item types out of the cert map, and that frees up those items to be able to fill any hold in the system. For those items that are local holds or no holds only, the system effectively treats them the same way. If it's no holds, then nobody can have it. If it's local holds, only patrons from the library who own that item can place the hold. So from the system's point of view, one item type for no holds or local holds only is effectively the same thing. It operates the same way outside of your library. So because this is a very high turnover rate, this is where the majority of our new holds are coming from. And this is such a huge thing. We do have a holdable new one and a non-holdable new one. Same thing for DVDs. DVD new, holdable, DVD new, not holdable or local holds only. Big drop off in the number of holds on these, from 87% down to 7%. And then new Blu-ray also has holdable system-wide or not holdable or local holds only options. And now we're down to less than 1% of the overall number of holds. But again, these are the 3 areas where people complain the most and have complained the most, and we've heard the most for the last 15 years. All right, so we're going to fix those. Everything else on the list, new DVD J, there are so few holds placed. This is the last year's worth of holds. It effectively, at this point, it doesn't matter if it's system-wide holdable or not, because there are so few holds being placed that it's really not an issue. New audiobooks and CD audiobook new, we're combining those 2 codes into CD book, or book on CD new, sorry. And again, very small number here. These 2 codes combine to get there. Music CD, we're saying, okay, fine. And new playaway, again, we're saying, okay, fine. So these are the codes here that we are recommending that we move forward with. And these would be one-for-one replacements for these codes here. So if you have anything cataloged as DVD-J new, it would just flip over to DVD or NDVD-J, right? If you have any of these three, then we need to know from you if you intend to do holds or you don't intend to do holds. That's how we would move forward on these. And we would be working with, if this is approved, then we would be working with every library to make sure that we move your things correctly, that we make sure that your circ rules are set up correctly and all of that. Then we have some other item types here, which are kind of on the fence. They're all used by only one library. So these numbers here, this is number of libraries who are using these codes. That's the number of items, and then the percent in the catalog. One library, 2 items. Do we really need an item type for 2 items in the system? One library, 11 items. One library, 21 items. One library, 1 item. One library, 6 items. I just checked. So all of these items were, as of April 1st, I reran these numbers yesterday, and I think there's like 15 of these now, these video games new, and it's 2 libraries now. But again, we're talking about, under 20 items and very little usage. I'm not sure we actually need to replace these, because if you called and said, I have 5 of these things and I would like a new item type, we would say no, because honestly, it's more work than it's worth from a system standpoint to have to go back and touch everything that needs to be touched to set that up for that few items. And then these are the remaining current new item types. As you can see, none of them are currently being used, although I think that this book PBK now has 1 item in 1 library. These are basically not being new. These last 2 we had already removed. There's a couple of items in the system still, but we're not using these. Nobody has access to those. And these are basically not used, and had no holds placed against them in the system for the last 15 months either. I don't think we've ever actually used MP3 book new. I think that's a code that was added to the system and no one ever used it. So certainly we're not going to replace that. Doesn't make sense. And then you might think, and we'll come back to this in a second, I just want to get through the rest of this particular document. The other thing, when we talk about new materials item types, and I talked about percentage of holds in the system, how often something gets held. This little graphic here, this is every hold in the system since the 1st of January 2021. Oh, I'm sorry. I was talking about holds here. These are not holds. These are the percentage of items of the new items in the system. So it's 0.55%. That's 0.55% of all of the new items in the system. Sorry, I conflated my holds and my total number of items. So that's 87% of new items are books. Book new is 1.37% of all holds in the system. And if you add book new, new book, and new book L together, you only get 2.11% of all the holds placed in the system. So these are all holds placed since 1 January 2021. Book, no surprise, the most holds. Book J, next one. DVD, book PBK, right? I was very surprised to see that the new item types are not held at higher amounts of the total number of holds. This chart here, this is every hold in the system since the 1st of July 2021, broken out by item type. Yes, it's too small and you can't read it. The important thing here is to note that the lines in yellow are the 20 new item types. There are not 20 lines here because not all 20 of those item types even had a hold placed against them. So I've broken out all of the item types that had a hold placed against them. Book CD new, book paperback new, 1 hold. So those are these 2 right here. But this gives you an idea. This red line is 0.0971% of holds. So, or less. So in other words, this is less than a couple hundred holds, right? Everything from here down. And we've got all of these new item types down here getting very, very, very few holds. But when we talk about holds reciprocity and you sent me something, or I got something but we don't hold it, a lot of times that's DVDs. DVDs and Blu-rays are typically the place where that occurs the most. But DVDs are 10% and Blu-rays are less than 1% of holds. So we're really only talking 11% of all holds in the system are causing, plus these couple of 2% worth of new books. This is what we're killing ourselves over when we talk about the reciprocity policy, are these item types. And the number of holds that they're actually generating is, 85,000 holds. That's a lot of holds. But overall, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a huge number. So all of this information was somewhat surprising to me. And then the last thing that I wanted to show you is this one. So what I did was I broke out every library in the system, what new materials, item types they're actually using, and how many items overall. This is not how many that are a year old or newer. This is in the system. How many items are there assigned against them? Book new, new book, and new book L, because they're going to be combined into one thing, are highlighted with the cell is highlighted. Things that are either removed or on the chopping block are done in red so you can see them easier. And if you scroll down, there are only 7 libraries that are using new book and book new, or in one case, new book, book new, and book new L. And so for those libraries, I checked if the hold rules were the same, if the circ rules were the same for those item types. And what we discovered is that Hudson, they check out book new for 14 days, and those allow system-wide holds. And they check out and hold new book for 21 days and only allow local holds on those. And they do have counts in both of those areas. So Hudson, we would need to talk to say, did we mess up something? When you told us to make a change in the system, did we not do it correctly? Or are you still actually separating out your new books into holdable and not holdable ways? And if they are, that's fine, because we have an item type for each of these, right? So we can cover this no problem using our new item types. The other question that we had was Wethersfield schools, book new and new book, circ rules are the same, but the hold rules are different for those 2 item types, which doesn't make a lot of sense. So I think this one is definitely an error in the system setup. But all the other libraries who are using book new, new book, and new book L together, some combination of it, they hold and circ exactly the same way. So why are we using multiple item types to do the exact same thing? We don't need to do that anymore. So that is essentially the fallout of many months worth of research and trying to consolidate all of this information into one set of more easily digestible information. The other documents that you got outside of this one that shows by library what new item types you're using and how many that you have is the subject of the cleanup report. So every library that is used that has items that are older than the 1st of January 2021, which is not the cutoff date we'll use when we actually run this product, but that was the cutoff date for this report because that was a year ago. We've got the library, the RSA member, right? So if you are a library that has branches, we'll scroll down. Greater West Central, for example, all the Greater West Central branches are grouped together, and then here's the actual branch code. So that's why there's two seemingly the same things here, because this is a branch versus this is the RSA member. What current new item they have and how many things they have that are older than our cutoff of 1 year. And as you can see, there's a lot of them there. I think there's 15,000 something items on this list that do need to be cleaned up. That will help greatly with holds, because what happens is when a patron goes out into the catalog and finds a title that they want to place a hold on, if your library has no holds for book new or local holds only for book new, and I'll pick on Atkinson because they're at the top of the list, one of Atkinson's 22 new book items is older than a year old, but it's on the record that your patron wants to get, they're not going to get it, because the system's going to go, oh, well, this is a new book item and you don't allow holds on new books, so we're not going to let you have that. Versus if you're a library that allows holds on all your items, you send them out system-wide, when your patron goes to place the hold on this item, the system's going to doesn't care at that point now, because you allow system-wide holds on book new. And so the patron would be able to get this. So the half of the libraries that are placing holds on particular item types, which is fine for you to do that, but what happens is when we have items that are older than need to be but are still cataloged as new, it can block holds on that item for your patron. So we really need to get this cleaned up to stop that. And the last thing that I linked to, which I'm not going to go through today, but something for you to read. This is a very quick draft of kind of the order of how long or what steps we have to do in order, and about how long it would take for this swap over to different item types for new materials and cleaning up all the old item types. And it gets very nested in that we have to do a lot of work up front, hopefully over the summer if users group approves this, to add in all of those new item types to the system, to talk to all of our libraries to make sure we know which ones you want to use. We need to add every hold rule in the system has to be modified. Well, actually has to have duplicate hold rules added for every one of the new item types. Every cert rule in the system that specifically calls out a new item type has to be modified to add in the new replacement item types. And we have to do all of that before we can even start cataloging anything on those item types. Then we have to talk to you. We have to figure out what to do with on orders, because we may have to change our processing or how we mark on order items so that they don't get caught up in this 1 year age out kind of thing. And then we have to actually do the work, which is going to take anywhere from 2 months to 6 months to do that. And then after we're done with that, we also still have now the old item cleanup. We have to clean up all 15,000 of those old items. We don't know where to put them in your library, right? Because we don't know what item type you're using. We don't know what location code they're using. So we have to work with you, again, individually on a library by library basis to clean all of those up before we can then go back and remove all of the item types that we're no longer using, take them out of the circ map and take them out of the hold map. So that's another 2 to 6 months to do that work. So this is not a short project. This is going to be a lot of work for us, but from a patron point of view, from the standpoint of how we're cataloging new items and what we're doing with item types, it will be very beneficial. So I think I have talked more than enough. Now, if you would please unmute yourself and yell at me for any reason you would like to, and or ask questions, and or tell us what you think, that would be wonderful.
All right, you've got a thank you in the chat.
I saw that. That explanation could not have been good enough that no one has questions.
Okay.
Now, granted, there have been several conversations about this, and every time I talk about it, I keep trying to clarify down the information so that it's the most useful. Who's that?
This is Elizabeth.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello.
we can hear you.
I'm sitting on a train, so I wasn't sure. I'm trying to work through workflow for us. Would you recommend when I move books, when I change books from new book, I currently change them to book but leave them in the new location. Would your recommendation be to change them to the new book holdable instead of to book?
I would say no, in that if you're using a new location as the methodology to say that something is new for your library, but it otherwise circulates like a regular book, then I would just use new book. The idea behind having an item type new book holdable that is system-wide holdable is to help those libraries that do want those books cataloged on their own item type, so that the end of month statistics and all the other statistics that we run will correctly report those things out, rather than just saying they're all books and then we have to run sub-reports based on location code to get them that data.
Okay.
Did you say you're on a train?
I am. I have a ticket for 6 tonight, so I'm on the Metro train to Chicago.
Okay. We were trying to figure out what the noises were, and then I heard a train whistle go off, and I was like, oh, I bet that's what that was. All right. Carla asked a question in chat. I look in the item group editor. Some of my library's new items over a year old are considered lost or missing. Does the map disregard lost missing materials when considering holds? Okay, so if a thing is lost or missing, it's not going to be able to fill a hold. It's not even considered for a hold in the system. And when we do the bulk move work, we would not be probably changing those item types. Essentially what we would do if an item's lost or an item is missing, it can stay on the kind of legacy item types, or if it's one that's been cataloged on one of these new item types that we would be proposing, and it goes lost or missing, it'll be excluded from the reports that we would run for your library in the future to say, hey, let's say in Macomb, you guys use maybe 6 months as your cutover point between new and a regular item. Lost and missing, as well as like on orders and a very few other special location codes or statuses would be excluded. And then if that item was found and it got checked back in, the next time at the next month when we ran the report of all of your items older than 6 months, we'll say, here are the ones that we would appreciate it if you would edit to a regular item. It would appear on that list. So over time, as items get paid and then removed from the system, or they're found and they are put back into circulation, those items would be updated to either a new regular item code or a new, if it's still a new item at that point. It could go missing 3 weeks after you catalog it, and then it shows up a month later and it would still be a new item.
But while they're in lost or missing status, do they block holds?
Yes,
or
they
because
would still
they're
block holds though, right? So because, well, and it's not that item is blocking holds. What's actually blocking the hold is the fact that if you have a line in your hold map that says for our library, book new is local holds only, when a patron places a hold, as it's running through the circ map, and this only happens in RSA CAT, by the way. This does not happen in workflows. Because again, workflows assumes library staff are placing holds correctly, and so it puts less restrictions on you. But for a patron in RSA CAT, it actually does two lookups. One, it does a lookup to see, is the patron even allowed to check the item out? That's a circ map thing, right? So if you have an item type that has a circ map line that says this no circ, then the patron couldn't actually put a hold on it because they can't check it out. So why send you a material that you can't check out? Then the next thing it does is it looks at the hold map and it goes, oh, I see in your library, this is a local holds only material. So if you have it and you're on a record that has your item, it'll say, oh, great, I can place a hold on this because you own it. I'll place the hold. If the patron has selected a record that you don't own and any other library has used new book, it will block the hold, right? Now, the way our system currently works, the library that was using new book may allow system-wide holds on their items that are book new, but because you don't allow system-wide holds on the book new, the system's going to block it. So this is why we need two item types for those items that get the majority of the holds in our system, because that way the libraries that are willing to send it are going to be using an item type that you are not using in your library for local holds. And so then now it would only be an item from a library that only allowed local holds would potentially block it. And it doesn't always block it, it sometimes blocks it. Again, there is no true reciprocity in the system short of everybody catalogs everything exactly the same way.
So if another library has had an item in a new book status that has been lost for 5 years and you have a no holds on new book rules, then your patron would probably be blocked from placing holds on that item in RSA CAT.
Yes.
Okay. to grant,
yes.
a very specific situation, but
that is part of the reason why we need to separate those items out for the high volume holds areas, because that way the chances of it happening get reduced by 50% right off the start. No other questions?
Well, shall we dive into the reciprocity discussion and see if more questions pop up when we do that?
Sure. I will stop my screen share.
Okay.
Oh, hold on. You don't see Quincy listed on which document?
The new by item type. I mean, new material item types used by library.
Really? Hold on.
Yep. I mean, she's correct. I was going to bug you about it after the meeting.
That's interesting. That would tell me that you're not using any. Let me go over and look at a different report and see if I can find that real quick.
Y'all do use new item, like new book or something like that, I would assume.
Well, not every library
Maybe not?
does. Yeah, not every library does. There are some libraries that don't use any of these item types. Monthly statistics. Do we have one that breaks it out by item type? Catalog format. Holding counts by item type. So I will open that. We'll wait while that opens. All right, Quincy. Item types for Quincy. Sorry if you're looking at my bald spot, but I have to get my eyes closer to the computer to actually see what it says. If I knew my alphabet better, I could probably get here quicker.
It's between P and R.
Quincy, Notre Dame. Okay, Quincy Public Library. I'm going to main branch now. No. Quincy Public Library main branch does not use any of the new item types. And the outreach branch, which has a shorter list of item types, also does not use any of those item types, which means to me that if I go over and look at the hold map for Quincy, there's probably no lines in the hold map that block anything either. I will look. OPQ, I'm still on the P's. No, Quincy Public Library is not there.
All right.
Oh, hold on. They do have no holds, but it is for very specialized DVD codes.
Okay.
Yeah,
But not on the list because
they're
not using new items.
They're
Okay.
not using any new item types. No.
Okay. And yeah, and Beth just chimed in to say Lillian Evans also doesn't use item types for new materials either. And yeah, and item type may not be the way you designate that a book is new. If you don't have special hold or circ rules about it, then you don't really need to, basically. All right.
That also means much less work for you as far as moving things back. You do have to report on things a little differently if you are interested in getting reports on new materials. You would be doing it by a location code, I would guess, would be the most obvious way to do it.
Yeah. All right. Okay, well, I will, it sounds like we've mostly wrapped up our questions on that. So I will turn on my screen share and share the, current draft of the reciprocity policy. And if y'all, I'll do the Word version that way if y'all want me to change something. So there's not a ton of changes since our last thing, but we did add the statement that in bold, that it is the responsibility of member libraries to ensure that library staff are trained in how to place library range holds on materials on which they have restrictions. Just to kind of clarify that because workflows will allow you to place holds on things that you might have, that even if you have a line on your hold map, prohibiting holds on it, workflows will it assumes that staff and workflows are doing what they're supposed to be doing, basically. So if you, for example, your libraries, for example, does not loan out your audiobooks, then you should train patrons that when they are placing holds for staff, they should select library as the range for those holds, or group if you have branches, for the range for those holds, so that you're only placing it on things that you own, because that is an item type that you do not loan. So ergo, it does not meet reciprocity standards. So we added that statement after the last couple of discussions we had of this. But otherwise, this is kind of the reciprocity policy as it currently stands. And basically, it just kind of, as Kendall said, we're trying to differentiate better between what is a standard, what is a policy, what is a procedure. So we're trying to kind of eliminate a lot of the nuts and bolts and hows are not in this policy. Policies are not the place for those. We don't want to have to bring a policy back to vote if there happens to be a workflows upgrade that changes which button you click. That's silly. That is a procedure, things like that. But basically, kind of, as Kendall has said, sort of a statement of intent. It is our recommendation that all libraries share all circulating item types. We want you to have hold rules that accurately reflect what you are willing to share, basically. If you have a hold rule that excludes a certain item type, or a circ rule that prevents the checkout of that item type, then you are not supposed to place holds on that. RSA Cat will manage that for you, generally speaking, and library staff, should be trained to not place holds on those things that they have restrictions on, basically. And then if you have such restrictions, it is on you as a library to inform the patrons who are attempting to place the hold. Don't make someone else explain your library policies for you. It is your job to do that. And then the last part, which is kind of a big change from the previous one, is that if you receive an item in delivery to fulfill a hold, even if the hold should have been blocked, if you get it, you can give it to your patron. We're not asking you to turn around and send it back. You may continue to do so if you are more comfortable with that for some reason. We won't stop you, but a lot of libraries just, on both the sending and receiving end, we've heard a lot of feedback that it just feels kind of like a waste of time and resources to send something to someone and then have it sent right back, especially from libraries. And a lot of this has been from libraries who are sending things and are saying, I send it to you because I am happy for you to have it. Please take it and give it to a patron, I would say, if anything, it has almost been more of the sending libraries who have kind of pushed for that to some degree. And then just, bearing in mind that we have procedures in place for if an item appears on your pick list that you don't want to send out, that you are unable to send out, unwilling to send out. You need it for a program next week. It was an oops hold and it doesn't meet your reciprocity rules, one that somehow slipped through. We have procedures for not sending those. That is where no transit cards come into play and all of that. So this is not, intended to sort of force people into suddenly sending out things they're not comfortable sending out, but rather to ideally eliminate some work and some thinking, on library end. So feel free to discuss. And then at some point, we will stop discussing and we will see if we get a motion to vote. And again, not an approval vote, a vote to forward to users group for further discussion. Make sure I can see the chat if anyone is chatting. All right, I don't see a great stampede to type in the chat or to unmute. So I'm going to assume that we have just discussed this to death and that you are ready. Okay, Beth says that we've taken in all the points that we've made at the last meeting. Okay, so obviously this is not the end of discussion also, as I will harp on. So if you do feel like you are ready to vote on this, I will take a motion if someone would like to move to vote to recommend this to users group. Okay, Beth so moves. Do I have a second? And Lori seconds and Rebecca seconds. Okay, all right. Thank you very much. I guess I will request ayes in the chat. I will ask for ayes first, and then I will give you an opportunity to nay if you so just decide. So, okay. All right. That looks good. Okay. Any nays? Okay, I don't see any
eyes in the chat.
I did see your eyes in the chat. Okay, I do not see any nays, so we will say that motion has carried, and we will bring this to the next users group meeting for further discussion. Thank you all very much. That was easy. I mean, I say that was easy when we've spent, a good year working on it. So, okay. The next thing on the agenda, though, and I put this toward the beginning, just because may also be of interest to Kendall. I can stop my screen sharing and go back to this, though, is adjusting juvenile and YA profiles to adult. We all know that we have quite a few profiles in the system for 31-year-old juvenile patrons. And while I like to think of myself as young at heart, I do want my adult borrowing privileges. So we have been kind of discussing a potential cleanup project of these are the people who are, I don't know whether, not all libraries even use a YA profile. Some just do juvenile and then adult. But I think it's at least pretty consistent that everyone treats everyone 18 and older as adult, or at least that is our perception. So kind of, could we embark upon a cleanup project of, potentially automatically changing everyone who is 18 and either still a juvenile or YA profile to the adult profile. We've identified some challenges and pitfalls. Some of it is making sure that we are, that we would be changing people to the correct profile. If you use Juve 10, YA 10, and then adult 10, we'd want to make sure we do it correctly. Kendall just added in the chat that there are 8,075 people of 18 or older who are currently set to juvenile or YA as profiles. Almost every library has some. Another pitfall, or not pitfall, maybe challenge we should say, as far as doing this is for libraries who keep, different types of applications for juveniles and adults, or collect different information for juveniles versus adults, the need to update their paper records. So if we were to do this, we would probably be doing it based on sort of here's a report of your patrons who would be changed. Right. Workflows does not currently automatically move patrons to, adult when they hit 18. This does not happen automatically. Staff have to do it. Typically, people end up doing it when the card expires. But, so what we've kind of talked about maybe doing is that this would have to be us giving you a list and saying these patrons will be changed to this profile on this date unless you stop us or beat us to it, basically. So if you want to change them to a different profile, you can manually change it, or things of that nature. So this would probably not be something where we would just be flipping a switch on everyone, but we would be providing some reports, some lists, and warning of this will happen on this date if you don't tell us not to. If you are changing people to adult earlier, that's totally fine, and you probably won't even be, really affected by this. This is kind of more on the oldest that anyone should be. Anything other than an adult is definitely 18. I know a lot of people, switch them to an adult profile as soon as they hit high school, So yeah, that's totally, yeah. If you are doing it sooner, that is excellent in my opinion. I would prefer people do it sooner, to be honest. But I think 18 just seemed kind of like a good starting point for you're definitely an adult at that point.
The other thing to mention is we would only do active patrons. We would not do expired patrons, because we don't want to modify an expired patron and reset their last activity date. So if they did come back into the library and you did renew their card and didn't notice that they were a Juve, even though it was a 40-year-old, the next time we ran that report for your library, they would appear on that report and they would get fixed at that point. So
right. So I guess other than sort of the things we've already talked about, I mean, are there concerns you would have about moving to at least some level of automating this, about some level of cleanup? Also, as you see in bold on the agenda, please enter birth dates, because otherwise we can't do this at all. I was doing a slightly different cleanup project and found a lot of users without birth dates. Got really mad. So please enter birth dates. And feel free to use the chat or to unmute yourself and speak. Okay, what I'm hearing is that this is a great idea and we should start on it tomorrow.
If only we could do anything that fast.
I know, no, okay.
It will require a survey at least, because we need to know the time you would want set.
Yeah. Does just out of curiosity, just as a brief survey of this group, what age, I mean, if there is a specific age, do you swap over to adult, and do you use YA or not at all? Okay, 18, don't use YA. Yeah, 18. Okay. Okay, so yeah, 18 seems like, okay. 13 for June. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, using a YA profile is definitely not at all a universal thing. We didn't, if I remember right, I mean, maybe not if I remember right. If I was doing it right, when I was at Peoria, we didn't use YA and just swapped them to adult when they were in high school. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, like Illinois Prairie. Okay. So no one would be catastrophically messed up for us doing it kind of as a cleanup project when they are 18. That's good. We don't have anyone who's like, no, 21. That must be old enough to drink in order to check out the R-rated movies or something. I don't know. Okay, cool. All right then. Well, I was gonna say we're moving very fast, but it's actually almost been an hour, so it's not that fast. The next thing I have on my agenda is just that I was going to share that we have added some new documentation, partially because it was on our agenda last time to let you know that, we had some out-of-date stuff. So I will just share that on the system parameters page, down here under user profile differences, I have finally finished updating this spreadsheet. Which, are you seeing my spreadsheet now, or are you still seeing my Firefox?
We are not seeing your spreadsheet. We see Firefox.
Okay, there we go. So this spreadsheet that describes the different user profiles has now been updated, and some of the hold limit inconsistencies have been corrected. There were a couple that deliberately had a higher limit, but we did not intend for random recip borrowers to have a higher hold limit than regular adult patrons. So we've corrected that in the system as well. And so this is up to date and hopefully informative. But we have also added in the workflows, documentation, and training in our circulation, in our cheat sheets. We have added cheat sheets for Cards for Kids and Cards for Vets, which are kind of little, overviews of the program, explainers of the profiles that we have set up, and all of that. So we have one of those for Cards for Kids and one of those for Cards for Vets. And then
I think the Cards for Kids expansion was actually signed into law.
Yeah, so we'll probably be
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it
slightly
was.
updating that again. Patty, do you know? I know you've been keeping up with that.
I have to unmute. Okay, I have not heard yet, so I will.
Okay.
I can Google this while we're chatting.
It's either
All
been
right.
signed or sent to the governor's office, one of the
Yeah.
two.
It
Yeah,
has
I know
been
it was
sent to his office,
close.
but I haven't heard that it's been signed yet.
Okay. So, I mean, it won't change much, for us from procedure perspective. We've got the profile set up and everything now, but as far as how y'all, apply it and stuff, that may be the difference. But also, realizing that massive spreadsheet of user profiles was slightly unwieldy, Sarah went through and created this. Also, credit to Patty, who created both of those guides, those cheat sheets for Cards for Kids and Cards for Vets. And then Sarah kind of went through and wrote a more narrative of the user profiles and kind of what they are in sort of plain language rather than reading through that spreadsheet. So that also exists. So if you are, this is not, a exhaustive list of every possible user profile, but it's kind of the ones that we might recommend that you use for certain things. So if you are trying to figure out, I've got this weird situation, what sort of, profile do I use for this person? Especially things like, do I want to add a homeschool profile? Things like that, like a homeschool profile that has a higher hold limit, that sort of thing. So those now exist. Big thanks to my team for creating those. But I wanted to share that those are some new toys we have for you. And that brings me to the end of my official, our part of the agenda. So the rest of it is now your open forum, which I hope y'all will feel at least somewhat talkative. So if you have anything that you would like to brag about, any recent programs that you've done at your library, or successes, or I don't know, changes you've made to your workflow, or we moved the scanner at our circ desk and it was a life changer, whatever it is, feel free to share. Or if you have questions, or you're running into some problem at your library and you want to, brainstorm some solutions, things like that. So whether it is challenges or triumphs, whatever you have to share, I will now shut up and let you share them. And thank you, Kendall. I did get a question in the chat of whether we would be moving any juvenile profiles to teen or YA as part of that cleanup project. I don't think we would do that, just because they're relatively rarely used, and I think the onset times are not consistent enough. Whereas with moving to adult, I think we have a good enough sort of, everyone at 18 should probably be an adult profile now. I'm getting big Thursday afternoon vibes from the crowd. If you came to RSA Day, did you have fun? Let's see. All right, you get 30 more seconds of awkward silence, okay, it looks like the governor has not signed the expansion yet. Thank you, Patty. So I'll give it long enough to get good and awkward, and then I will assume that y'all are just telling me you're ready for the meeting to end. Okay, RSA Day was good. Thank you, Barbara. Ooh, okay. Okay, if basically, could we not adjust? Well, I mean, this is in no way a done deal yet. I mean, we'd have a few more steps to go through before we embark on this cleanup project. That would be, I guess, part of why we wouldn't do expired cards, because we wouldn't be, we wouldn't want to, restore privileges to someone who maybe shouldn't have them. That would probably, what that would probably end up being would be if we did it by the method where we would send you a list in advance if there were patrons who you didn't want moved automatically. We haven't really discussed, I guess, yet what we would do with patrons who maybe have a balance, if they're blocked or barred. So that will be a point of discussion, I'm sure, as we go along. Yeah, I don't know, because it wouldn't be, I mean, I know often adults have higher like checkout limits and things like that, but as far as like, I don't know. Yeah, we'll probably have to think more about that, Carla. Something for the good news column. Galesburg Public Library broke ground this month with a completion of a new building by end of 2023. That's good. That's been a long time coming for y'all. I'm excited to hear that. Okay. I think the awkwardness had enough time to settle that I'm confident that no one else suddenly wants to chime in. So I guess I will just thank you all for attending. We will try to have a pretty quick turnaround on, notes and getting the video posted. Again, thank you to Patty who took notes. And we hope to see y'all at users group, where we will get to, again, probably discuss the reciprocity policy and do the official vote on that. So, make sure if this is something that your library, does really feel strongly about, make sure that your voting representative is there. Again, remember, policies are 1 vote per library, but discuss it internally if you do have strong feelings about it one way or the other, and just make sure that your voting representative knows your thoughts, I guess. That sort of thing. And then I just did get a quick question in the chat. If you're considering doing an inventory, please send a ticket to the help desk, and we will get back to you with the information we need to run your lists. So, all right, okay. All right. All right. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for taking this Thursday afternoon and hanging out with me. Have a great day.